Hello there, here with a video, another film review sort of thing today. I did one of them recently for One Hand Clapping, and I'm doing another one here of Midas, the new Brian Epstein biopic that has just come out on Amazon Prime. I think at the minute this is only available here in the UK. I don't know if it's available in America and other places, but I thought I would today do a little review of it, just a quick one, what I thought of it, whether I'd recommend it or not if you're able to see it. So we'll go over the good, the bad, and yeah, I haven't got any notes or anything for this, so sort of winging this from memory. So I watched it the other night. The time of recording this, it's Wednesday. I watched it Monday night. I'd have done the video sooner, but I've been busy and also been kind of processing it in my head, just sort of trying to like make sense of it in my head, what I think of it. And overall, I would say for the most part, it's very good. It's worth a watch. There are certain things which, you know, it's sort of glossed over. At the end of the day, this is I think it's just shy of 2 hours, this biopic. It's worth a watch, but it does sort of speed through it. It kind of glosses over certain things. At the end of the day, if they wanted to go into like super detail, it would end up being like an 8-hour biopic, and no one's going to watch that in the grand scheme of things. However, this sort of biopic is only really going to be aimed at hardcore Beatles fans, the likes of me and you probably. You know, casual fans, they'll probably be more interested in stuff like the impending 4 Beatles biopics, the official ones coming out in a few years' time. They'll probably get a lot more attention than something like this will, because obviously they're the 4 Beatles themselves. And the important thing to emphasise here is this is a Brian Epstein biopic. It's not a Beatles biopic. Yeah, the Beatles play a big part in it, but it's not focusing on them specifically. There are other Brian Epstein managed bands in there, like Jerry and the Pacemakers and Cilla Black, etc. So it's not just the Beatles, but obviously the Beatles play a big part because it's the biggest thing that Brian Epstein did manage. But I should say as well, I've not watched anyone else's reviews of the film yet, so I don't know what other people are saying about it. I am going to watch some after this, but I didn't watch them because I didn't want to go into the film with sort of a pre-judgment in my head. I wanted to go in with like no prior knowledge about it, if that makes sense, sort of take it in and make my own opinions. And for me, the thing that annoyed me the most watching this film, and to be fair to the director and the producers, etc., they've obviously done a lot of research for this film. They obviously know their stuff. And yet the biggest issue is the fact they call him Brian Epstein, Mr. Epstein. I mean, that's a schoolboy error, that. I mean, anyone who knows the Beatles knows it's Brian Epstein, not Epstein. Brian Epstein called himself Brian Epstein. The Beatles called him Brian Epstein. George Martin called him Brian Epstein. Yeah, it's just a bit bizarre how they call him Epstein. Yeah, I didn't really understand that. It annoyed me every time it said Epstein, because I think that's maybe how Americans would pronounce it, but Brian wasn't American. Neither are the Beatles. And I don't know if this is an American film, although I would assume it would be available in America already if it was. So who knows. But that was annoying. Another thing that got on my nerves, that annoyed me, was the scene in the Royal Variety performance where John goes, clap your hands in the cheaper seats, rest of you rattle your jewellery. And then they go into Money, which is just wrong. They should be going into Twist and Shout. Now, it's worth pointing out that there are no Beatles songs, like original Beatles songs, in this film. That's kind of to be expected. You know, it's very, very rare that you get Beatles songs in these sort of things. It's only really an official Beatles produced stuff where you'll hear the original recordings. So what we get instead is covers. So we've got stuff like covers of Money, Some Other Guy. What other ones have we got? Drawn a blank, I can't remember the other ones we get. But yeah, obviously Twist and Shout is a cover, so why it's not included in here, I don't know. Could they not get the rights for it? I mean, they'd have been better not showing anything than going into Money. But yeah, that was a bit annoying. Another thing was the actors. Some of them are very good, some of them are not so good. The guy I apologise now, I don't know any of the actors' names. I really should have researched it and got it up on my iPad. But the guy playing Brian Epstein is very good. He plays the part very well. The guy playing Paul McCartney, I think he plays the part very, very well. Of the 4 Beatles, he probably does the best job. He sort of has the McCartney mannerisms down. He kind of has the voice down as well. I thought the guy playing George Martin was very good. He's not in it very much. He's only in 2 scenes, which is the scene when they first went to Abbey Road Studios in June 1962, where George Harrison says to George Martin, "I don't like your tie." And the other scene that George Martin features in is the Our World, All You Need Is Love broadcast from June 25th, 67. So yeah, George Martin isn't in it much, but the guy playing him does a very good job. I think he has the George Martin mannerisms down, and George Martin's just a really cool guy when you see him in this film. The lady playing Cilla Black, I thought she did a very good job as well. Now, the other Beatles, the guy playing Pete Best, I thought he was okay. But the guys playing George Harrison and Ringo, well, Ringo, I can't really comment on Ringo. You don't see him that much. He's sort of just there in the background. But the guy playing George Harrison, to me, he was trying a bit too hard with the humour. It was coming across not very natural, like too forced. Like, George, to me, was always probably the wittiest in some ways of the four Beatles. He had definitely the driest sense of humour, and the guy playing him in this film is really trying to get that across, but it's not working. It's just, yeah, he's just trying too hard, and he's not doing a good job. But the guy playing John Lennon, this maybe is an unfair criticism of him, but he's a bit of a short arse. He's noticeably smaller than the others. Now, Paul was the tallest, or still is the tallest of the Beatles, but John and George aren't that much smaller than him. But in this film, doesn't really help him sitting down here. But let's say Paul's that high, and John Lennon's about that high, which, you know, it's noticeable. I mean, like, the others are looking down at him through most of the film. It's a bit comical in some ways to see them looking down on John Lennon. But yeah, otherwise, trying to think of our actors, that's kind of it covered, really. But the narrative itself, so it sort of goes from, it starts I think in 1959, but it's only briefly then it goes into 61 and keeps going forward from there. And a lot of the film has Brian Epstein, the guy playing Brian, breaking the fourth wall. So he'll be looking into the camera and talking, explaining what's going on. It works kind of well. It kind of glosses over certain things. You know, it covers things well, like the 64 US tour. It explains all the places they went to. It goes on about the Japan tour, where, you know, the locals weren't very happy that they were playing in sacred grounds, effectively, or what was viewed as sacred grounds. They talk about the Philippines. It doesn't really show it, which is a shame. I thought it'd been a pretty cool thing to show, but they don't. They just sort of talk about it, or Brian talks about it. Another thing I like that it showed is the fact it does show Brian's relationships in some ways, and of course it's easy to forget now that back then in Britain being gay was illegal, basically. So, you know, there's scenes where Brian is literally getting chased by the police because he's having it off with a bloke somewhere. Yeah, I think it was decriminalised in 1967 being gay. So yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on this sort of thing, but yeah, I think I don't know if it was before he died or not, but yeah, his death isn't shown in the film. It ends with the Our World broadcast, which is a bit annoying that it doesn't go right up to his death. It doesn't really explore this idea that Brian had it in his head at the time that the Beatles were going to get rid of him, that they didn't need him anymore. It doesn't really explore that at all. It kind of briefly hints at that, the candlestick portion of the biopic, but otherwise, yeah, it doesn't really cover it much, which is kind of a bit of an oversight. But yeah, otherwise I'm really a bit negative here, aren't I? It's a good biopic. It's worth a watch. It definitely is worth a watch. Whether I would watch it again or not, I don't know. It's not the greatest biopic you've ever seen. I mean, I imagine the ones that are coming out in the next, is it 2027 they're coming out, which are going to be focusing on the four Beatles individually. I imagine they'll be in a different league and they'll be much better than this. But as it stands, this is decent enough. So yeah, if you can watch it, I'd recommend giving it a watch. Just be prepared if you're a hardcore Beatles fan to be a bit irritated by some of the, I would call them minor details. They're not major things really in the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I'll wrap this video up now. So thank you very much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you on a future video. Goodbye.